Hello, hello, hello. We are live, live. I'm going to give everybody a moment to come into the broadcast. But we are live on Facebook, on YouTube. We should be live on my personal Facebook page, my Facebook business page for my blog, and YouTube. Are y'all tired of seeing me yet? I was very serious about my commitment to doing a stream every day so that we can keep these issues and keep these conversations going, because we know history has shown us, even in 2020, that if we do not take control and be very intentional about having these conversations, they will not be had. So I am excited to be here. And as people are coming in, can you please do me a favor and like this video, share it with your audience, and let them know we are continuing a discussion about the Black community, about things that have been that our community has faced since we came to America. Because I am Black in America. I am quite sure that I'm descendants of slaves. I haven't done my lineage work yet, my ancestry work yet, but I'm quite sure I'm a descendant of a slave. I mean, my family in Baton Rouge, I'm sure their story is a little different from my mama's side, but I think it all will come to the same conclusion that we had ancestors who were slaves. So yes, please like this video, share it. If you haven't already, follow me on social media at Jessica Simeon Lofton. It's a little bit different depending on the platform that you are on, but you can find every link on my website, which is just my name that you see right here. Wait, let me write. You see right here is this allofdat.com, and you can find my links to all my social media. Go ahead and connect with me in that way so that we can really build a community around these conversations and around just topics that we're dealing with in general. Every day I come on, my intention is to discuss the book, but there'll be times where I do something a little light, like I did, I think it was last week or the week before, I talked about Kevin Hart and celebrities and stuff. So there'll be times when I'm not talking about the book. Y'all excuse my green screen, it might take my clothes away. Not away, but you know what I mean. So it'll be different. There'll be times when I come on about different things, but right now I'm trying to get through this book that we started reading earlier this year. So introduce yourself in the comments. For the last 2 days, I've had a lot of people to interact in the comment section, and it really helps me. It's not easy to go live. It's not easy to go live. It's not easy to go live and talk about things that people don't like to talk about, or people don't want to talk about, or people don't want to hear. None of that is easy. So when you leave a comment, or when you like the video, or when you share it, it's really encouraging, and it helps me to get through it, because believe it or not, I am shy. I don't see anybody, I'm not on Facebook doing this. I'm doing this through a third party, so I can't necessarily see you. But if you leave a comment, I can. So just let me know you're here. Let me know you're tuning in. And we'll go ahead and get started in just a second. I'm just lining up some of my resources because I want to make this a little bit more educational, because I'm seeing that most people that are watching don't have the book, or maybe have never even heard of it. So I'm going to try to pull in more visual things. So I'm going to gather that. In the meantime, like I said, let me know who you are. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you're looking forward to. The title of today's stream is "It Be Your Own People." So we're going to get into some stuff that is going to be quite interesting. So I have one one more resource that I need to pull up. Once I get that pulled up, we can start. So give me just a second. Oh, here we go. This is the one that I was looking for. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we are discussing chapter 4 in the book Stamped from the Beginning by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. This is a National Book Award winner. This is a best-selling book, especially over the last year or two, as we see more instances of police brutality toward Black people. A lot of people went out after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's deaths. They went out and bought this book. I am one of those people. I was very moved to do a little bit, do something publicly versus just my own. I was moved to try to do my part and make my place in this quest, this journey, this endeavor for equality for the Black community. So I was led to this book. I chose this book to start off this book club because, believe it or not, although I'm like one of maybe 2 or 3 people in the book club right now, this book club is called Unlearning Anti-Blackness, the book club, or the Unlearning Anti-Blackness Book Club. My goal with the book club is for people to be able to understand, identify, and correct any type of anti-Black attitudes that we may have ourselves or that people in our lives may have. You don't know something is wrong or bad until you're told that, especially because we've all been conditioned to really be anti-Black. We're in America. America was built on racism. America is racism. Racism is the foundation of America. And I'm going to constantly drill that. I'm going to constantly say that because we need to understand that. We need to understand it, take it seriously, and do something about it. It's really hard to fix a broken foundation. So basically what I'm saying is we're going to have to start all the way over. And the only way to do that is to educate ourselves. So I felt like this was the perfect book to begin this book club because I'm not a history, like I know history, but I'm not like the authority on history. I'm not the authority on Black history. And I know there are others out there like me who are learning this information as they read, just like I have. I'm very excited to get into what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to help you understand, especially if this is your first time watching one of my streams. I wanted you to understand why I'm doing this and understand why it's important to me and why it should be important to you. My hope is that after every broadcast that you will be inspired to do your own research, to start conversations with people around you, and to find your place in this movement for equality for Black people. That is my goal. So I'm just going to continue to do this until we see some change, and it'll take on different forms. It'll look different as I'm getting more comfortable doing this. This is like I said, my 3rd day. As I continue to do this, it'll, I'll be able to have a schedule and get more of a groove and do different things. But right now, I'm just trying to see how this works. So your feedback is appreciated. So chapter 12 begins on page 143. And this is the last chapter of part 2 of the book. The book is broken up into 5 parts. There's about 7 chapters per part. So this chapter marks the end of part 2. And what I wanted to talk about, the reason why I said it be your own people, I actually got this phrase. I don't know if y'all know Untitled Bullock. He always says that it be your own people. It be your own people that put you under the bus, that throw you under the bus. That reminds me, I got one more resource I need to look up. Yeah, he kind of, I can't take that credit for that phrase. He's the one that says that all the time. So yeah, so this is, oh gosh, I hope I can find, here we go. Just had one more resource that I needed to pull up. Oh man, of course. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. So chapter 12 opens up with a story about Gabriel Prosser. Have any of you watching heard about Gabriel Prosser? If you have, please let me know in the comments. Gabriel Prosser was a 24-year-old enslaved African. He was 24. He was 6'2". He was literate, so he could read, he could write, he was intelligent. And he was owned, I hate to say that word, but he was owned by Thomas Prosser, and he lived in Richmond, Virginia. One of the things that I said yesterday, when we talk about people in history, especially when we talk about slavery and we talk about Black people, sometimes we have a tendency to think of them as like mythical, like people. And I want us to always remember these people actually existed. They were human just like you and me. They had feelings like you and me. They had brains like you and me. They had familial connections like you and me. So I just want you to remember that these people that we are talking about are actual humans. And that, I think that'll help us kind of put everything in its context. Thank you. Oh, you got it done. Yeah, and hand clap for Tony. He got some done that I was unsure he was gonna get done. That was quick too. That was awesome. Thank you. Yeah, y'all did it perfectly. Okay, so side note, me and my husband run a candle business, and so we have a huge order that we got to get out, and we just putting some finishes touches, so he got it. But yeah, so I want you to remember that these people were actually humans. They were humans like us. We need to humanize them. These are not fairy tales. This stuff is not made up. These people are real. So Gabriel Prosser was a real man, 24-year-old, 6'2" Black man, was a blacksmith. He was owned by Thomas Prosser, as well as his two brothers and his wife. So he was enslaved along with some of his family members. He was what makes him significant is he was the leader of it was not a revolt, but a plot, a scheme, a plan to revolt. It was unsuccessful, and we'll talk about why. Hopefully you've gathered why by the title that I use. But his slave revolt was unsuccessful. And before I go further, I was just thinking about how Black slaves took the names or were given the last names of their slave owners. And I was just thinking like how disgusting that is, that Black people, we are marked, by slave owners. That like, have you ever really thought about where your name comes from? If you can't trace your identity to Africa, you clearly have an American name. Have you ever thought about where it came from? And I think it's completely disgusting that happened. And then even us, we have those names. And it's just a reminder of how our culture, our identity, everything that made Black people who they were. They were Africans, but now we go by the term Black. Everything that made them who they were, their practices, their food, their languages, even their gender in some cases, they had to wear gender neutral clothes. Everything was stripped away. And even today, we have this identity crisis. To be Black in America is like suffering from an identity crisis. You have the last name of slave owners. You don't have a country to trace back to. I don't know how many of y'all follow the Shade Room on Instagram, but I was looking at some of their posts, and Ludacris' wife was like teaching their daughters their native dance. Because I think she's from Africa. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I was like, it was so cute that the girls were doing their little, they were doing their little thing, listening to the music. But it kind of made me sad because I'm like, man, I wish I had a culture to trace back to. I wish I had a culture to take pride in. I don't take pride in American culture. I take pride in being Black, but I don't take pride in American culture because it's not my own. You get what I'm saying? And not only that, as I shared with someone earlier this year who had never really considered it, we don't know where we come from. If you don't do a test, a DNA test, you don't know where you come from. And then still, it's just giving you an area, not even the exact tribe, not even like we literally cannot trace our beginnings. And that makes me mad. And I don't know that I don't think I'll ever get over that. As I'm becoming a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, trying to teach my children, my sons, how to be Black men, how to take pride in themselves. It's becoming more important to me that I understand where I came from myself. Identity is very crucial to how we behave. It's crucial to our values. It's crucial to us, our entire being. And I think that this could be a reach. But it's hard to identify, and it's a struggle even spiritually, because you're told, your identity is not what people give you. Is not what they give you. Your identity is in Christ. And it's like, that's very hard to even wrap your head around when you don't know where you came from, besides your mom and your grandmama and your great grandparents. Like, you really don't know. And so it just makes life difficult in ways that some people who don't have this struggle cannot imagine. And that's why a lot of people say there's a difference, like the experience of a Black person in America versus a African or Black immigrant is totally different, because you can trace your family, you can trace your tribes and your customs. How many of y'all watch The Housewives of Potomac? Wendy, she's Black, but she's Nigerian, and she has access to information about herself that the other Black women don't have. They even did, this was before Wendy joined the show, but they even did like a tour of a plantation when Giselle took them to Louisiana to meet her dad and go to his party and all that stuff. And remember on that episode how sad they were when they were on that plantation and saw all the different devices and mechanisms that were used to control the slaves and keep them enslaved. So these are two very different experiences that I think go that we don't really talk about enough as a group. It's so much. It's very hard to pin down what we should be focused on at any given time. But that's just something that's an underrated issue. But anyway, back to Gabriel Prosser. So he was inspired by the Haitian Revolution, and his plan was to have a march on Richmond, Virginia, to seize control of the weapons and to arrest the governor, to demand freedom and equality. And so what does this sound like to y'all? That was in the 1800s, like 1800. Does that sound like 2020 or no? It sounds like 2020 to me. The same way in which people are organizing protests and organizing all these different events to fight for the same thing they were fighting for in 1800. That is completely baffling to me that we are still here. And it's so sad. So he ended up recruiting what is estimated to be up to 50,000 people, 50,000 enslaved people. Do you know how they had to like, how could you organize 50,000 slaves when there was no technology? You know, the book doesn't go into detail about how they actually organized. But could you imagine trying to organize 50,000 people and it's supposed to be a secret because you're a slave in the 1800s? But this man was able to do it. He had a team of people. It was about 32 other people that were helping him. Yes, ain't that? We are still fighting. We will. And that is the question that I ask myself every day. Like, what is it going to take for us to see what we've been doing ain't working? You know, we have to do something about this. Otherwise, we can forget it. And everything that has always been done will be done in vain. We can just forget it. But he was going to, even in this rebellion that he was planning, this revolt that he was planning, he was going to spare the lives of some of the friendly white people. He was going to spare the lives of the Methodists, of the Quakers, and some of the French people. But guess what? He planned to kill the black races. And so why is that significant? Well, like, why do you think that that's significant? That even he knew that his own people who had consumed these racist ideas that we've been talking about since we first started discussing this book, he knew then that black people who consumed racist and anti-black beliefs were dangerous. He knew that. He knew that they were so dangerous to his mission that he was willing to kill them during the rebellion. That says a lot. And I want to connect the dots from that to today. But before I do, I just have to add that I got to tell you how this revolt how it panned out, like what ended up happening. What ended up happening is the day of the revolt. Now, he and his leaders had organized over, tens of thousands of slaves in Virginia. Enslaved people. I'm trying not to call them slaves. Enslaved people. They had organized all those people. The day that it was supposed to go down, do you know that two slaves who wanted to protect their master told the slave owner about the plan? Two slaves were responsible for the failure of what would have been the largest planned slave rebellion in North American history. Two black people was responsible for that not happening. Can you believe that? How does that make you feel? I hope from learning that information, it helps you to understand that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. You ever heard that before? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. And I think there are plenty of modern day examples of that I'm about to get into right now. About to get into it right now. One example, and I think we all know this. Well, first, before I do that, let me explain what could have motivated them. I don't know how it could have. I guess I didn't live back in those times, so I can't really say what I would have done or what I wouldn't have done. But there was this thing, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm gonna share my screen right now. Let me get the right tab. Okay, so there was this thing called, wait, this is well, I don't have the title here, but there was an act that was passed in 1710. So at this point, this act had been in place for a while. The act was passed. It was called the Meritorious Manumission Act of 1710. And it acted in Virginia, right where Gabriel Prosser lived and planned his revolt. This act involved freeing enslaved people for doing good things as defined by what the policy was at that time. So normally, if a slave saved the life of their white master, if they saved his property, if they invented something that the slave master could make a profit from, if they snitched on a fellow slave, they would be rewarded with freedom. So there was an actual legal act that basically rewarded Black people for selling each other out. So I hope that now you understand, since we talked about uplift suasion the day before yesterday, and then yesterday we talked about the how slavery began to boom in America. I hope now you understand that Black people were taught and were trained to go against one another. And that can be, that you can look at that as the root of a lot of our issues today in our community. Have you noticed that we are the only race that argue online with each other? We're the only race that is quick to throw each other under the bus. What we do publicly is just an example of what the slave masters, the politicians, the legislators at that time, they were doing it undercover. But they made us the forefront of it by giving Black people these different rewards. And you have to, like, I don't want to say this, but you know, you have to be real about it. If you were in slavery, I can imagine that it took a toll on their mental health. They weren't getting help for that. You getting beat day in and day out. You working in a field, and there's an opportunity to get out of that. I can see how enslaved folk did that. You know, I don't know what I would have done had I been in that position, but you know, it's not hard to see why they would have done it. But that the sense of community that should have been there was not there, because of the different things that slave owners and racist people did to destroy that sense of community among Black people. And now we have that today. So a perfect example, I don't have a lot of people watching right now, but a perfect example of this manumission thing, you can look at it with Daniel Cameron, who was the attorney general, or who is the attorney general in Kentucky, who is a Black man that refused to prosecute, refused to convict, get justice for the death of this innocent Black woman. This was a Black man who was at the helm of this. And we learned through that situation, through that case, which nobody really talks about anymore, yet there has been absolutely no justice for her life. We learned through that that he was being like Mitch McConnell and the Republicans were pulling his strings. And then y'all remember when the Republicans had their national convention? He was a speaker. So what is that? That is his reward for refusing to get justice for Breonna Taylor. It's the same thing. It just looks different now. It don't really look a lot different. It just fits modern day, with what we got going on now in 2020. But it's the same thing. It's the same concept. That could have been a moment where they were made an example of, and he did the right thing. Y'all saw how many people were begging for justice for her out in the streets, day in, day out. Oprah buying up billboards, people marching, doing protests, everybody changing their profile picture to her. He didn't care about that. That didn't make a difference because he had his people. These people were pulling these strings. And he sold out an innocent Black woman. We're not talking about somebody who did a crime or who did something, like, even though that wouldn't have mattered because she didn't deserve to die. But we're talking about an innocent woman who was in her home. A Black man was instrumental in her not getting any justice. And the reason why that's so important is that could have been me. If you Black and you a woman, it could have been you. And guess what? You wouldn't have gotten justice either. So we have to identify these people, these skin folks that ain't kin folks. Because if we're not, we will be quick to assume that they're going to do the right thing. But, some Black people just love white folks so much that they begin to have a disdain for their own community, which is why this book club, which is why I created it. Because I want people to see that you can be Black and still have anti-Black attitudes. I've had anti-Black attitudes that I've had to correct myself. So I'm not coming from a place of you're wrong and you dumb and you don't know nothing. No, I'm coming from a place of let's fix it. Like, we know what these problems are. Let's fix it. So apparently, we didn't know what we was doing. This book really helped me to see the things that I've done in my own life, or the beliefs that I've held in my own life that I should not have had. So that's my goal. That's why I'm saying, if you're watching this, share this. If you're not comfortable sharing it publicly yet, because at some point you gotta be. If you're not comfortable sharing it publicly yet, share it privately. But share it so people can see it and they can learn and they can understand what's going on. Because the perception is that America has changed or that Black people are better off, and that's just not true. And so I'm still going to go there. I have another example of how it be your own people. And so this example, I'm just stating what actually happened, and I'm challenging you to think about it. This one involves former President Barack Obama. I'm not a Obama-like researcher, so I don't know all of what Obama did or didn't do for Black people. I don't know. That's a really big debate among Black folks about what Obama did or didn't do. But what I do know, what I saw myself and what I heard myself, was that Obama really stepped in and he negatively, in my opinion, impacted Black folks being able to get some type of justice or being taken seriously. And so what happened, I'm going to show you a clip. And this clip is from The Breakfast Club. I have a copyright statement in the description box on YouTube. On Facebook, this is me saying I'm using it for instructional purposes. This clip is coming from The Breakfast Club. And in The Breakfast Club, do you all remember when before I go there, do you remember when the NBA players were protesting the playoffs? At this time now, we had already had George Floyd. We had Breonna Taylor, and this person was what's his name? Was it Rashad? I can't remember his name. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name. I gotta let me look up his name because I have to say his name. Because we don't even talk about him anymore either. Jacob Blake. That's what it was. It just came to my mind. It was Jacob Blake. You remember when Jacob Blake was shot close range 7 times? He was, from what I understand, he was trying to stop a fight. Someone called the police because people was getting rowdy. He was trying to stop it or something like that. But anyway, all that's beside the point. They used deadly force and shot him 7 times. He did not die. He's still alive. But at that point, we was fed up. Like, look, we done dealt with George Floyd. Did you see what happened? Did you see the protests everywhere? Then Breonna Taylor, Lord, how that happened. And now you mean to tell me they done shot somebody else? And that's just the people we know of. Those are the high profile people. It's several other people that were shot and either killed or shot and seriously injured that did not get that type of coverage in the media. And that's, again, why it's important as a Black person, if you care. Because, again, we have established at this point that it be your own people. Everybody that is Black is not team Black. So if you're a Black person and you care about our community and you want to know and be tapped in to the things that affect us and what's going on that mainstream media is not going to talk about, you need to find someone Black on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, or wherever. You need to find them and plug into them. Make sure they are reputable. Make sure they give you facts and receipts, but you need to find them and be tapped in so you know what the things that are going on that we are not discussing. There was just a leaked audio of Joe Biden. I talked about this the other day that nobody's talking about, when he disrespected really the concerns of civil rights leaders. So you need to tap into these independent outlets. I will share some resources in the description box, but you need to tap into them. So anyway, bringing it back. So remember, Jacob Blake got shot. This was during the playoffs. LeBron James has been very instrumental over the last couple years in doing things, being part of different movements and being a voice, particularly for the Black community. He's been one of those athletes who's been very vocal. And so he was part of the protest. But I want you all to hear what he said about why they decided not to continue the protest. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it now. And this is coming from the Breakfast Club. This is the Breakfast Club interview. Also, I want to know, like, I had tried to find this everywhere. This was literally the only clip, the only audio that I found of this. It was very difficult to find. I looked everywhere. I looked at all of the media outlets. Nobody was talking about the role that Obama played in the way that I interpreted what it was. But here's the clip.
In protest of the police shooting of Jacob Blake. And here is what happened.
There was a time where we were ready to leave too. We was trying to figure out, if we leave or if we stay, what is our plan? What is our call for action? And I'm lucky enough to have a friend, the 44th president, that allowed me and allowed CP and allowed us to get on the phone with them and get guidance. This can be plan of action. This can be something that you guys can ask for.
Okay, so I want to stop there. So what LeBron is saying, they were doing a protest and they were trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? We know that we need to do something. But let me call Obama, because I got a relationship with him. Let me call him and get some guidance from him. Obama was marketed to us as the first Black president. He is biracial. So again, what did I say at the beginning? If you are an immigrant Black person, or if you are a biracial Black person, your experience is going to be totally different from a Black person who is not. So I just want you to think about that. Like, Obama did not grow up with the type of issues that the majority of Black people face, but he was presented to us as the first Black president. But I'm not gonna go into all that because I don't really have a lot of time to, and it could just go left. But I just want you to think about that. He's not completely Black. He's biracial. His mom was white. So that is very significant when you begin to talk about somebody who is supposed to represent Black people. A person who has a white parent, one of their parents is white, is not going to look at Black issues the way that someone who is completely 100% Black gonna look at them issues, or whatever you want, however you want to say it. You know, that just is what it is. It's totally different. There are some biracial people who don't even know they Black, you know, depending on which parent they were raised with. Their experience is going to be a little different. You know, I'm not taking away from their experience. I'm just saying their experience is going to be different. So we have to remember all of that when we're who we go to. Remember what I said yesterday. You have to vet people. You can't just be led by anybody. You can't get guidance by anybody. You have to really think about where that person is coming from. Yeah. So yeah, and you know, my dad is biracial. So like, you know, he's a melting pot, you know, when you get into the Creole people and all of that. But what I'm saying is his mom was white. He was not raised in a Black household. You get what I'm saying? Like, you're just like, some issues are going to be different depending on like your family and who you come from. But like I said, I don't want to get too much into that because it'll take away from the point that I'm trying to make about what Obama's role in this protest. Remember, we're connecting this from Gabriel Prosser and the slaves telling on him to protect their master. What kind of sense does that make? We're making that connection to today. So that's why I said that, but not taking away from what you said. I'm just saying, like, that's just something to think about. So let's just continue to hear what LeBron says about him getting that guidance. Oh, Lord. I went too far.
There was a time where we were ready to leave too. We were trying to figure out if we leave or if we stay, what is our plan? What is our call for action? And I'm lucky enough to have a friend, you know, the 44th president, that allowed me and allowed CP and allowed us to get on the phone with them and get guidance. This can be plan of action. You know, this can be something that you guys can ask for. And if we can get that, then we can continue to push the needle, and you guys can also continue the season as well.
I mean, that was always the thing, right? It's like you don't want to just make an emotional decision and just...
Okay, you hear what Charlamagne said. Charlamagne is a suspect. But anyway, so basically LeBron was saying that they wanted to protest. They wanted to skip the game. They wanted to skip the game. They wanted to skip it. But when he called Obama, Obama told them to play. So think about it. Yeah, it sounds good when you dress it up. Like, oh, you know, you need to play because you don't really have a plan. But could you imagine the impact that it would have made if those players would have continued their protest? Do you imagine the message it would have sent? So what does it sound like to you? The president who we loved and adored told them to go play. He stopped what would have been a very historical moment in sports, and definitely for the Black players. He came between that. That's what I mean when it be your own people. That they weren't going out there, you know, that they were moved by that. And like Charlamagne was saying, oh, well, you don't want to make an emotional decision. It is emotional though. And I'm an individual. I can do what I want, and we want to not play. And so for Obama to come in and say, no, y'all need to go play, and then come back with specifics and come back with that, he stopped what could have been a very significant moment in history. He came between it, and it really made me sad, because here's the thing. Those players didn't have to come with specifics. We already know what we want. At that time, we wanted there to be justice. And that goes back to what I said yesterday and the day before that. Don't forget this concept of uplift suasion. As soon as Black people became free, they were getting a crash course how to be in a society and not cause trouble, as if they were the ones in the wrong. How you gonna tell somebody who was just a slave, working day in, day out, being beat, some were dying, children being ripped apart, they being torn away from their families? How do you tell them you need to understand how to go into society? No, it is not Black people's burden to constantly, like, that's why we still asking for the same stuff that this man was asking for in 1800, because that's been our approach. We don't need to do anything. Y'all know what we want. You know the systems that have been created to keep us oppressed. I don't need to come to you with a document before I protest. That's the same, like, I can protest at any time that I want. And so for another Black leader as powerful as Obama to tell them not to have a protest, in my opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, that's suspect. That's very suspect. Because how many more times does this have to happen and we have to sit and come to the table? We're not mad enough, if you ask me. And there's nothing wrong with anger. Doesn't the Lord get angry? Weren't there instances when Jesus, didn't he turn over the tables in the temple or wherever it was? You can't, like, we're not gonna get what we want, what we deserve, what should be our right, by trying to play the game that white people have, like, established. It's just not gonna happen. Because if it did, we wouldn't be here today. And that's my point of everything that I'm doing, to show that these things that we look at and as so far in history, that we are living in those times right now. So he came between what could have been an amazing protest, just like the two slaves who told it. On Gabriel Prosser, they told it. And so guess what happened? Not only was the planned rebellion a failure, not only that, they hung him. They hung Gabriel Prosser along with all the leaders who had planned the rebellion. So when people say, like I don't want folks to forget or even believe the myth that Black people were willingly in slavery. That's us today. That wasn't them. That wasn't all them. We really got to put some respect on our ancestors' names. When people say, "Oh, I'm not my ancestor, you can get these hands," and you really need to stop that. Put some respect on their names. This man organized a rebellion in 1800 with no technology, no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, no social media. He organized that along with his leaders and got almost 50,000 slaves, part of it. And two Black people told it because they were wanting to protect their master. And he ended up being hung. And so let's look at the NBA protest. Have we gotten justice for Breonna Taylor? Have we gotten any for George Floyd? Have we got any for Jacob Blake? Has he gotten any? He's paralyzed now. And guess what? The world is back to normal. So we really have to look at these things differently. And so what happened after this, the next event, first of all, they, like I said, they hung him along with 35 other people. And so there was the message of, if you try to escape, this is what we're going to do to you. That's the mental game that the slave owners and the legislators were playing with Black people. That this is what we're going to do for you. It is the same reason why so many Black people now are afraid to speak out against racism, who are afraid to do it publicly, who are afraid to do it to white people, who are afraid to call white people out on their stuff, who are afraid to call other Black people out on the racist things that they do and say. It's the same exact reason. Because you're afraid, we are, not me, but we collectively are afraid of the consequences because we have no power. And we've always been on the bottom. And until we get bold enough, we're going to stay here. And one thing I want to bring up, especially for the religious community, the Christian community, don't believe the lie that demanding equality for the Black community somehow goes against the message of God. We are not, Black folks are not asking to be above anyone. The problem is that we're not the same. We're asking to be the same. It's not a special privilege to not get killed when you're innocent by the police. That's not a special privilege. That should be like the minimum. So don't take on these beliefs and these fears. That's not what God gave us. He didn't give us that type of spirit. And the only way we can even be bold enough to do that, be bold enough to have those conversations, be bold enough to call things what they are, is if we do the work within ourselves. And part of that work is understanding the legacy of racism. We need to understand that. We get it and we know it, but we don't really understand it as a whole, you know, collectively. Otherwise, we would be able to organize and we would be able to be independent and think independently. And we wouldn't like what you call, you know, turn our noses up at people who dare to be different, who dare to say, look, I don't play by America's rules because they all made up and they only apply to Black folks. I don't play by those rules anymore. You know, I tell y'all all the time, when I met my husband, there was his attitude. And I used to be like, oh my God, I can't take him around nobody. But because inside I had internalized all these things, like I'm trying to achieve to prove something to somebody who got a head start in life. You get what I'm saying? It's a mind freak. You know, like it's a mental thing. And we got to undo that. We got to get from under that white supremacy, racism bondage that Black people collectively are under. Because if we don't, y'all, we might as well give it up. And that's just like for real at this point. We 2020 asking for the same stuff from 1800. We might just, if we ain't gonna do nothing radical being new, unheard of, powerful. If we don't do that, we might as well let it go. Honestly. So what happened after Gabriel Prosser was hung and killed along with the other leaders is Virginia's lawmakers, hear me now, the lawmakers of Virginia gathered together in secrecy. It was secret. To figure out, how can we restrain these slaves? What can we do to keep them from doing this again? It was bothering them. And so that's another thing. Me and Tony were talking about this yesterday about how we, like, y'all know there's a thing, there are people who have more than $100 billion of wealth in America. Mark Zuckerberg being one of them, whose platform I'm on right now. He has over $100 billion in wealth. So do you all think that there aren't secret conversations and meetings and different things happening that the average person is not aware of? Do you think somebody with that much money and that much power, he literally controls like part of the world with owning Facebook? Do you think that there aren't secret meetings that are being had now? Secret discussions? Hello, the meeting with Joe Biden and the Democrats where the audio got leaked. These things are happening. They met to figure out how to restrain the slaves. And their idea was that, look, if we keep free Black folks here around the enslaved folks, we're going to have a problem on our hands. They're going to continue to influence the other slaves. They're going to continue to have revolts and do all these things. They're going to continue to do that. So they proposed sending Black people they wanted to colonize Africa and send Black people who were free back to Africa. Like, y'all free, y'all got to go over there because y'all messing up what we got going on here. So what came out of that was this thing called, if you look at page 145, if you have the book, it's on page 145. There was this manifesto that was circulating showing that Black people needed to be trained on how to govern themselves. Sorry, I need to send a text. But yeah, so they started circulating this pamphlet was basically saying, you know, if we send all the Black folks free back to Africa, then white people will be happy and there won't be any revolts and there won't be any issues. So, you know, you see how they just feel like they could do whatever they wanted with Black folks, like they weren't human and didn't have their own sense of agency. Like, oh, we done used you up here, now you can go back to Africa. So, well, what ended up happening was they created the American Colonization Society, but it kind of backfired because now, remember, all this time, Black people are being told, like, you know, once you're free, you do this and you do that. And as they were in slavery, their cultural identity was stripped. So, you know, now you're having Africans who are born, now they're born from African parents, but they're technically American. That's where you and I come in, Black folks. You know, we're born here. And so what was happening, they had begun to consume the ideas that were put in their head about Africa. And so they were like, hold on, I don't want to go there. Africa is wild. And besides that, we built this country. We shouldn't have to go anywhere. Again, what that sound like, 2020. And the reason why Black people want reparations, it's the same thing. The same thing. So now you have Black folks who once had a connection to Africa. Now the culture has been stripped and now they have a negative view of the very place that they came from. How many Black folks now like, oh, I don't want to live in Africa? You know, like this stuff runs deep. This is not isolated historical events. When you talk about conditioning someone's mind, that's a lifetime thing if there's no type of intervention. Oh, this is a lot, and I want to keep going, but I gotta go get my kids. I want to keep going. I want to keep going because, listen, from the American Colonization Society, you had different movements that started to like stir up, and so one of them was led by a free man. He was Black. He was there were more slave rebellions that were happening. And a free man started recruiting slaves. So here we are again with another plot to overthrow slavery or whatever. This particular man was the founder of the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in the South. So this was a religious man who was plotting a rebellion. And where he was coming from was the story in the Bible about the Israelites deliverance from Egyptian bondage. That's where he channeled his activism. He was inspired by the Bible in this story. So again, we have to think about the context of this. Slaves were not allowed to read and write. But there was a movement. This is way earlier in the book. Please get the book if you don't have it, or go and watch some of my earlier streams on YouTube. There was a movement to Christianize, to convert all the slaves to Christianity, because they knew that they saw that it was helping them become submissive. But what actually happened, and a lot of people don't know this, I actually learned this year, that there was a different version of the Bible for the slaves that kept certain stories out, because it would go against, if you're reading the Bible, again, I don't know how anyone can read the story of the Israelites and not see Black people in this story. No other group matches that story. No other group matches it other than us. And it's like we believe biblical stories and biblical prophecies in every area, but we don't really talk about that a lot. We don't talk about the irony of that at all. But this preacher who had founded a church was inspired by that story. So, as you already know, it was unsuccessful, and he was hung. They hung the pastor, who was inspired by the word of God. Ain't that something? And so that's why, let me just say this. I've talked about the church and Christianity a lot, because all of this deals with that. All of it deals with it. You have to know, you have to be careful about who's teaching you. You have to read the word for yourself. You have to get to know yourself. I believe that, honestly, you can't really understand God until you start to try to understand you. Till you start dealing with everything that makes you who you are. You start thinking about all the stuff that has transpired in your life and everything that's led you to where you are. When you get really serious about God, you have to do something within yourself and touch all of those places. And it was actually that type of journey for me that led me here. I was actually empowered by the relationship that I was developing with God. Now I see God in a totally different way than I did last year, because I've really sat with myself, and I've sat with God, and I've prayed and asked him about all of these issues that are going on right now. And it has been empowering to me. And so now I don't really need anybody to approve of my view of things, because I know that I'm guided by the Lord. I even pray before I do these streams. This is not a legalistic type of thing. This is what's right and what's wrong. And the reason why people don't talk about it in church is because we don't like to touch on this stuff, because we don't like the way it makes us feel. We don't like where it leads us. We don't like the questions that it causes us to have. And so we just don't deal with it. But the problem with that is that's where the breakthrough is. That's where the breakthrough is for you individually. And then when you have that personal, powerful, individual breakthrough, then you'll be empowered to do something publicly, especially when you know it's the right thing to do. And so when you hear people talk about it, and another thing, like another reason why I believe that churches shy away from these conversations is because they don't really want to deal with the facts. They don't want to deal. They talk about the perversion of the word by slave owners, but what they don't understand is the perversion is where we are. Like, if you think about it, if the slaves were stripped from their culture, they were not allowed to practice their African spirituality. They were converted by their slave owners, by the slave owners who was manipulating the scripture, and that is all they ever knew. What do you think our perspective of the scriptures are? It's part of the manipulation. And you really have to break away from that and look at it critically and think about it like in the context of real life. And so it's painful to me because I'm like, the church don't want to talk about how its role in where the country is today. But, you know, you can't really get around it. The church has something to do, not the people who don't want to participate in church. You know, because there's a big thing. I talked about that before. I started, the more I got to know people, the more I started talking to people about God and about Jesus, I realized that there was a blockage that a lot of people could not comprehend becoming a Christian or being a Christian because of the history. And so what happens, and what I have seen happen, is the church kind of blames them, when it's really like the church needs to look at itself and look at the role that it's played and how it has perpetuated these racist ideas or looking up to a white standard of measurement. And I'm about to continue to show you why. If you look on if you have the book, look on page 153, the American Colonization Society, that was now telling Black people they need to go back to Africa, even though it wasn't working. Now, from that organization, the American Bible Society was born. Do you see the connection here? You cannot talk about racism and not talk about the Bible, because it is part of the literal foundation of racism. It was used as a tool. So you can't just say, oh, they manipulated scripture, so you got to get over that. No, the church got to make this right. Again, that is racist in itself, to tell, you know, to give a racist solution to to the problem of racism. Like, what are we even doing? So Ralph Gurley, who was the secretary of the American Colonization Society, believed that in order to get Black people to be down with the cause of going back to Africa, we got to link it to church. Remember what I said, Black people are the most church-going people, and we're still at the bottom, the most oppressed. I'm not talking against God. I want y'all to understand that. Do not look at this stream and go tell nobody Jessica talking about that. No. I got me and God, we good. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the Bible was used as a form of manipulation. So you have to really take a second guess at the entire way you perceive scripture. Because sometimes, have you ever like I've been a part of a church where I felt like if I was not doing what they was telling me to do, I ain't gonna say I wasn't welcome, but I definitely was not treated the same. Don't that sound like the same stuff here? So we subconsciously continue this manipulation of scripture to get people to do what we want. It may not be slavery anymore, but it's still manipulating them to do what we want. And I have an issue, and I'm gonna talk about it because it was real. Hold on just a second. Somebody's always in my door when I'm doing these streams. Hold on. Tony, are you awake? Hey, oh, you got your face. Girl, I'm in the middle of a live stream. It's okay. Okay, y'all, I'm back. I always have a visitor when I'm doing these streams, and I guess Tony is knocked out. He is knocked out back there. He can't heard me. But anyway, I'm gonna talk about this example. I'm sorry, y'all can see my green screen clips. I'm gonna talk about this because it really happened to me. And this is, again, see, this is what you cannot be worried about. You can't be worried about personal feelings when you're trying, when something's bigger than you. Like the issue of inequality in the Black community, this issue is bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than us individually. It's bigger than how we feel. It's bigger than the things that make us feel a way that somebody said. It's bigger than it. We're not that important. So, well, we important, but you know what I mean. Like, this is bigger than us. So we have to be truth tellers. We got to be truth tellers, and we have to be honest and transparent in our own stories and just telling the truth. And I want anybody who's ever watching me to know that I'm not going to sit up here and lie or front or cap or whatever you want to call it. I'm always going to be real. So I had a situation in the church where someone, now I was active in this ministry. I was working in this ministry. I was teaching a small group. I was doing or leading a small group. I was serving in production. I was doing all of these things. And there was one thing that I was asked to do that I did not want to do. I didn't have the time to do it. And I did not have the interest in doing it because at this point I'm almost burnt out. Because aside from doing that, I'm still an entrepreneur. I still got businesses. I still have children. I'm a wife. I still got a life, right? So when I told that person that I didn't want to do it, I was immediately guilted into doing it. Like, this is an opportunity for you to learn and for you to serve, and you can't really grow if you're not. And I'm like, okay. So I'm doing all these things, but this one thing is going to stop my spiritual growth. You got to be kidding me. Are you really telling me that now? So it's the same thing. Manipulating people to get them to do what you want them to do and using the name of God to do it. It's the same thing. That's why I'm saying we have to look at this stuff from a different perspective. We have to look at the history of things. Everything we do is learned, whether it's good or bad. It's something learned. You have to get to the root of that. And of course, something is going to shift over time. But it's the similarities for me. It's the similarities. I'm refusing to do something that you want me to do. Now you're telling me that I'm not going to grow or that it's somehow going to compromise my faith. And so guess what I'm doing now? It's someone who genuinely loves God and loves people and loves to serve. I genuinely want to do that. Now I'm wrecking my brain like, oh my God, I got to figure out how to do this. Oh Lord, if I don't do it, God, like I'm going to disappoint God and I can't do. Like, the mental stuff that sends you on. And people just sit behind their titles and they sit behind their positions and they sit behind they roles in the church after they have guilted people and don't understand that you are compromising the very faith that you want them to have, because now it's making I'm disturbed as a person. And now I feel like I'm messing up. All because I said no. That's slavery. That is the same, literally the same thing. It's the same concept. It's the manipulation. So I want to bring this up because I'm gonna have to end this. But I want to bring this up because it's going to start off the next one. Now, I have some things that I have to do that are very, very important for our candle business, tomorrow, and it's probably going to take up the day after that. So I am probably not going to be able to stream again until Monday, Lord willing. But I have to say this in this particular stream. I have to bring this up so that we can start here for the next one. But again, the American Bible Society was born from the Colonization Society. This is when they began to print the Bible, to print pictures. It was a campaign. I'm a marketing and communications professional. My job is creating social media campaigns, creating marketing campaigns to push messages. That's what I do for a living. This was a campaign to create a Jesus-centered culture, a Jesus-centered national identity. It was a campaign that was born from the attempt to get Black people to go back to Africa so that they would stop disturbing the enslaved people. They were trying to get the free people to go to Africa so that they would stop influencing other people to escape. A Bible campaign grew from that. And in this campaign was where they started mass producing. This is in the book. This is fact. I'm not making this up. They started mass producing, mass marketing, mass distributing images of Jesus, who was always depicted as white. The white Jesus, he came about in 1824. It was intentional. And now let me ask you, because I know about me, but I want to ask you, when you pray, when you think of the Bible, what do you see? When you think of God, do you think of him looking like you? Or do you think of him being white and fair skinned? And we know that Jesus was from the Middle East. We know that. But we're not talking about what we know. We're talking about what was shown. It's almost like we know it's not good to eat fast food every day, but we also know what's marketed to us. We know it's not good to text and drive. You know, we know a lot of things aren't like real, but it doesn't necessarily stop us from buying into it. So as white Jesus started to appear, Black people and white people they were subconsciously making connections between the white father, his white son, and the perfection of white people. That is why we still have the issues. That this was ingrained. We're talking about a mindset. It was taught, it was drilled, it was on purpose. And then when I was going on this journey, I'm like, Lord, I feel like you're pulling me in this direction. I feel like you're pulling me to bring light to this. Like, this is something I'm supposed to be talking about. I battled with my own perceptions of God, and I have never ever thought that God looked like me. Like, I've never been able to see myself in God. It's almost like you cannot undo the white Jesus. Like, you can't undo that image. They did their job. And so, a slave admitted that he believed that his master was God because he was shown pictures of white Jesus. He believed that his master was God because he's like, oh, this is a white man. And so that's how everything in America has been built around whiteness. Whiteness is the standard of measurement. It was built that way. That's why y'all, I just want y'all to understand that This is the same stuff that was going on back then. The stuff that we're dealing with now is the exact same stuff. It's the same stuff. And I'm going to stop here just because like it's so much to cover, and I didn't intend to like continue going or even start late. But I hope that this gives you some things to think about, at the very least to leave comments. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not arguing. I don't argue facts. Okay, this first and foremost. I do not argue facts. I do not argue, and I'm definitely not going to engage in a debate with someone who doesn't know or who did not read what I read and looked it up myself. I'm not like, I'm open to discussion. I want to have the discussion. The whole point of this is to discuss it. That's the whole point. But I'm not going to argue about it. And I'm definitely, like I said, not going to argue about facts. We can feel how we want to feel, but a fact is a fact. And so I just want to put that out there, that if you decide to engage in this conversation, I need it to be respectful to me, to others, and to this cause of equality for Black people. It needs to be respectful to those things, or not only am I not going to engage, I'm just going to block you. So I just want to make that clear, that this has to be a respectful conversation based on facts and experiences. So, woo, it's a lot. I'm going to end it here. And again, I probably will not be able to stream again until Monday. So I encourage you, if you have Amazon Prime, it'll be here in 2 days. Buy this book so that you can read it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself. Do the research for yourself. That's the only, that like, we have to do that. You know, we're not in school anymore, but that doesn't mean that we're supposed to stop reading. And we cannot always read things that entertain us. We can't entertain ourselves to death when it's work to be done. So I'm encouraging you to buy the book and read it as far as you can. You can look at my earlier streams on YouTube. I started months ago. We're on chapter 12 now. It's going to be moving at a faster pace now, because I am trying to do this every day, at least a couple times a week. So the discussions will be moving at a faster pace. But still, don't let that stop you from engaging if you're interested. You can find the book on Amazon at your bookstore. I have links on my website. Again, it is mywholename.com. You can find a link to the book there. And let's just talk about it. Let's continue this conversation and talk about, as you're reading this, I want you to read it and really absorb it and think about it. But as you're thinking about it, consider the implications of everything that you read, of everything that happened. Consider the implications of there being a slave Bible. Consider the implications of them hanging people who attempted to escape, who didn't even get to, they weren't captured, but they got hung. So just think about the implications of those things so that you can begin to see them in their proper context and understand why we're still here today, and how deeply rooted these ideas and these mindsets and these beliefs are for Black folks and white folks. Just consider that. Thank y'all for tuning in. I've enjoyed this. Like I said, I pray before I do these streams, because I don't ever want it to be like I'm not trying to get popular or get clout off of this. Honestly, I was just inspired because I'm tired of seeing the same story over and over and over. I'm tired of Black people being at the bottom. I'm tired of us not being equal. I'm tired of us having all of these burdens, burdens that are not ours, that we've given to God over and over and over, and he's waiting on us to do something, waiting on the world to do something. He's already said that how people should be treated. He's already outlined all that, but we ain't made it there yet. And we're the group. Don't get it twisted. Like people are going through stuff everywhere. But nobody has been through what Black folks have been through and are still going through. Nobody. Don't ever get that twisted. You know, we can care about other things, but when are we going to care about ourselves? I just saw a report about the Black Lives Matter money being distributed to organizations with different causes. So money's being raised at the expense of Black bodies and is being distributed to everyone. And what you have to understand is when you do that, when you level everybody up, if we're at the bottom, we're still going to be at the bottom. So it's time that we do something different, start to think about things differently, and begin to have some real solutions and to get on the same page. We are so scattered. We are not unified in the least. Everybody want to be right. I want to just focus on the facts. And I'll tell y'all when it's my opinion. And I'm going to give my opinion a lot, but I just want to focus on the facts. So thank you again for watching the stream. Please buy the book. Sign up for my newsletter. All of that stuff is available on my website so we can continue to have these conversations. And I will see you all next time.